Now let's move on, because the Ireland women's team were beaten 3-0 on Saturday afternoon by Germany. In many respects, there was just a 10-minute period which did for them, but ultimately the result is not critical in terms of their ability to qualify for the actual tournament itself. Ruth Fahy is with us to give us some analysis. Ruth, talking to people who know a bit about this, they were very concerned in the build-up to the game that this German team are probably the best team in international football at the moment. So any range of outcomes was possible. Where does 3-0 sit in terms of the damage that it does to the team, either psychologically or in terms of their ability to qualify?
In terms of psychologically, I don't think it will damage them too negatively at all, to be honest. Coming into the game, there's a lot of talk about predictive scorelines and things like that. Had said 3 or less would be good, and watching the first 10 or 20 minutes of the game open up, I definitely felt that even more so, especially after 8 minutes when they got that first goal. And Germany were actually better than I thought they would be. There was a lot of talk about them being number 2, but actually probably being the number 1 at the moment. I nearly kind of doubted that, but just watching them play, they seem to have upped it. Obviously, their technical ability has always been first class, but in terms of power, pace, speed, like the speed at which they play now, it's very much tiki-taka football. They're opening up Ireland a lot easier than anticipated in the first quarter of the match or so. But in saying all that, it was 3-0 at half time. Ireland went back in and regrouped and came out and had fixed those problems. They were, I suppose, less penetrating in the final third. They tightened the lines a little bit. And then ultimately they didn't concede in the second half. So psychologically, I actually think Vera Pauw would be quite pleased with that first half. In terms of qualification, doesn't set them back too much at all. In fact, conceding 3 goals against Germany, who put in 10 past Montenegro, who put in 16 on aggregate against Ukraine, it won't put them back too much at all. And all eyes are firmly upon 23rd of October when they take on Ukraine.
It seems, Ruth, they almost have a template if they were to come up against a team in the top tier, but not quite on Germany's level, where they might actually be able to squeak a result, where it possibly wasn't going to happen on Saturday, but the way they play out of the back with their backs to the wall before that is possibly a way that they can actually get a draw or a win and get that first big upset that perhaps they need for the next step in this progression.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think watching the game, the gap is clear. You're looking at 2 teams that are at a different level, but Pauw had such a clear game plan, and I think I saw one headline, defeated but not disgraced, and I think that's really apt. They didn't panic. They went down early, like I said, within 10 minutes. But the 41st minute, they were 3-0 down. But they didn't panic. They didn't capitulate whatsoever. I don't think they're anywhere close to sort of like nicking a draw or nicking points away from a top-seeded side like Germany. But what it did show is that they're capable of not being disgraced like Ukraine and Montenegro were. Ultimately, the goal is to get to a major qualifying tournament. And if they do, they're obviously going to face a team like Germany, the Dutch, Sweden, Norway, these big sides. There'd be a lot less of a fear factor than there was initially. Going into that game was pretty much the unknown. Like Vera had come in 2019, and Ukraine, Montenegro, Greece, their tests. Greece, Ukraine, more at Ireland's level, but that was the first big one of a big team, and there won't be a fear now when Germany come back and play Ireland Tallaght Stadium in December. Hopefully the group and the qualification will be wrapped up by then, but it's that first huge test, and I think they came through very capably.
The question is, what would you do to, I guess, give us a puncher's chance in that sort of scenario, Ruth? Were we operating off Ireland's very best on Saturday? Because I guess the aim was to get Rianna Jarrett into good positions where she might be able to speed past a German defender. The problem was she had 4 German defenders around her at every opportunity.
Yeah, you have to remember how difficult it is to play when you don't have the ball for nearly 90 minutes of the game. I heard Anya Gorman speak afterwards, and we're talking about a player who's got over 100 caps. She's so much experience playing against huge teams, and she said it was probably one of the most difficult matches she's ever played, one of the most difficult teams she's ever played against. And that goes to show just how good Germany are. Like I said, even better than I had expected. You're chasing the game. You're not just chasing the game. You're actually working at nearly your max percent for almost 90 minutes. So when you do get the ball, I thought in the first half they actually did okay. I thought Leanne Kiernan, she created a corner kind of out of nothing. She showed that she had the pace against the German fullback. They got a second corner, and from both those corners there was kind of semi-chances. In terms of Rianna Jarrett's performance, talk about a thankless job. She was she did her best. She couldn't manage hold of the play. I think if she did get the ball, she was dispossessed. Once or twice she managed to lay off the ball, but it's an impossible job. You could see what Vera Pauw had planned. She's trying to utilise the channels, use the pace of Kieran McCabe, and get Jared to hold it up. It didn't quite come to fruition, but again, when you meet Germany again, that's kind of the next stage that you bring into your progress. Saturday was about just keeping the scoreline down, ultimately, being realistic, as Pauw always says. Operating up front, then it didn't quite come off for Ireland, but like I said, the next time they play Germany will be a little bit better. Thought they did okay in the centre, little John Connolly and O'Sullivan. I think when you see a match where Denise O'Sullivan doesn't quite get on the ball, doesn't quite get those little moments where she usually does, even against a big team where Ireland have usually had very little possession, Denise O'Sullivan has managed to kind of stand out at moments. It didn't quite happen on Saturday, and again, that just shows how good Germany actually were. And I thought Vera Pauw was really intelligent, made a smart move to bring Diane Caldwell back at right full. I hadn't anticipated that Ruth Fahy would go in back beside Quinn. Fahy obviously plays there with Liverpool as a centre half. I thought they did relatively well, and Anya Gorman, the only player in the Women's National League to start, stood strong and definitely represented the domestic league really well. So I think Vera Pauw actually nailed it, to be honest. I was really proud of the players at full time. 3-0 is a very respectable scoreline. People can say that's not good enough, but there's no shame in going out against a side ranked number 2 who look like number 1 in the world, coming off 3-0 away from home after not being together for how many months. There's absolutely no shame in that scoreline, and very respectful, and it all goes really positively into Ukraine, and ultimately that's what it's all about. It's about getting second place. That was the plan from the very start. Vera Pauw hasn't moved from that plan. She's been completely consistent in what she's been saying, and which is really refreshing. I thought her post-match interview was excellent, and I think they definitely have everything lined up perfectly for Ukraine at the end of October.
October 23rd, that massive clash with Ukraine. That's an away game for us. Ruth, thanks for joining us this morning. Cheers for the analysis.
Thanks guys. Have a good one.
It's Ruth Fahy giving us her thoughts on a 3-0 win for Germany against Ireland on Saturday afternoon.